Tanzania is a wonderful country. I'm trying to learn Swahili, but I'm still a bit, I don't know, maybe a bit shy. But I'll get there.
Yeah, you're very good with languages, so I'm sure.
How do you know that?
Because I know you speak good English, good French,
English, yeah.
and you know.
Yeah, French is definitely my native language.
Yes,
Dutch
absolutely.
as well. Yeah.
So what do you think of our country?
You have the most amazing country. You're blessed with so many things. I have been lucky enough to have a few weekends off, not many, but I've been able to go to Serengeti, which is, of course, the favorite destination for the French, the Ufaransa, wanapenda Tanzania sana. And so I've been to see some wanyama and I saw many in Serengeti. And I discovered Sadani, which is off Bagamoyo. Been to Bagamoyo also to see a bit of history. And so you've got literally everything. Of course, Zanzibar, you've got beaches, you've got pori, bush, you've got animals, all of them, more than, I think, many other countries around. And you've also got pieces of history, ruins of castles that tells the story of the country. And you've got also, I think what matters the most to me is wonderful people. Really, really nice, really kind, really welcoming, always welcoming you with a big smile on their face and always very helpful. So I'm very lucky. What's
your favorite animal, wild animal?
I would have loved to see more Simbas, of course, and especially when they're little, you know, lion cub. You know, sometimes in Europe, some people think that when you're in Africa, you live in mud houses and you have a lion cub as a pet. So I would love to be pictured with a lion cub, but I don't think the lioness would let me really. But they're so sweet. They look like big cats. So I think these are my favorite lionesses, and I like the fact that lionesses they make the rules. You know, they make the rules, and the lions they're just guests in the group. I quite like that. You know, women empowered like lionesses. I think they are my favorite, but they're all amazing. I mean, when you see them from far, elephants and twiga and swala, and you've got so many. You're so lucky. Do you realize how lucky you are?
I know we are. I mean, I think the big question is how best are we using the luck that we have? That's a different subject. When you realized, or rather you were told that you're going to be moved from your new post is going to be Tanzania from Ghana. What was the first thing that you did?
Oh, I went straight to Google, I think, to learn more about the country in the political sense, because the good thing when I was posted to Ghana is in France, nobody knows Ghana. Nobody even knows where it is. We say next to Côte d'Ivoire, say, oh, okay, but they're not even sure. And it sounds like Guyana and all that. But when you say Tanzania, everyone has been there or dreams of going there. And immediately people say, oh, you're so lucky. Like they think I spend my days in Zanzibar on the beaches.
Do you?
No, I don't actually. No. I wish I did more. But I would have put more colors, you know, and I obviously didn't. So the first thing I went to see is what's the political environment, what's the economy like, and what are the areas that we will cooperate and work together. And so more than what can I do as a tourist? Because, you know, once you're there, it will be high time to look around and if I manage to have time. So yes, that's what I jumped on. It was quite unexpected because Tanzania is probably the country that the most ambassadors want. So we apply, really.
Yeah.
And the highest number of ambassadors was Tanzania, of applications was for Tanzania. So I never thought I would have it. I mean, I was so lucky. And I made so many people jealous.
Fantastic. We're happy that you're here now. I mean, France and Tanzania enjoy a smooth relationship. It's been there for years. But you've mentioned about tourists. I mean, we've got just over 100,000 tourists from France who visit Tanzania. But it feels like they've just discovered Tanzania.
Yeah. I think there is a certain class of people in France who want to have something wild, original, and not do what other people do. So when you say, oh, I did a safari in Kenya, there's always someone who said, oh, me too. When people say, I was in Tanzania, people were like, oh, really? And it's more new. And we like to be like discoverers. We like to be first goers and be able to tell something that other people don't and brag about discovering things that are a bit different. And so there was like some very famous safaris and holiday destination that was Kenya. And then suddenly they just want to do something different. Mm. So I think there's always been French people coming, French tourists, maybe not that many. And certainly having a direct flight from Air France to Kilimanjaro, to Zanzibar, certainly helps. But if you look at the French people, the French nationals who are here in Tanzania, some of them have been there for over 40 years. So they didn't just appear. It means that there was an attraction for Tanzania, and then sometimes men or women, they married a Tanzanian, and they stayed forever, and they fell in love with the country and they stayed, which is a good thing for us, having people who've been around for 40 years. They know the country, and so it's very precious for us when we just arrive to hear about what they have to say, what it was like 40 years ago, how the country has evolved. It's always like first-hand testimony is always interesting.
Apart from tourism, what else do you think Tanzania has to offer to France?
I think we need to develop the trade because the global France-Tanzania trade altogether is around 100 million euros, which is nothing. Mm. There's definitely more that we could do, and you definitely have more to offer. In the area of agriculture, indeed, which is probably the number one products that we are buying from you, but we would buy maybe not more in volume, but more in value if it was processed agriculture. Buying coffee or buying cashew nut or grains, great, it's raw. But if you transform it and if you sell coffee ready to put in your machine, or if you sell tinned fruits or dried fruits, the value is much more for the same quantity because there's the price of the labor, it creates jobs. So this agro-processing network needs to be developed because it would just add value to the things you already have. And this is something that across Africa, suddenly people realize that, of course, if you sell raw products, you make money immediately. You get a penny today. But if you process it locally, you will make £1 tomorrow. And in the meantime, you will have great jobs. So I think that the area of agro-processing is something that really should be developed, among other things. But it's true for meat, it's true for fish, it's true for many areas that you have so much here.
From your point of view, why do you think that is not happening at the moment?
I'm not yet...
I'm talking about the whole continent.
Oh, the whole continent. I think there has been a reaction of better a penny today than £1 tomorrow, to speak English currency, in former English colonies, but it's true in former French colonies as well. I think that probably the entrepreneurship mindset has not always been encouraged. The ownership of land can be a deterrent. You build a factory, and then one day someone says, "Oh, but this land doesn't belong to you." So why would you invest money to create a whole factory, recruit and create a company if the land does not belong to you? If you look at how the United States have been created, how France have been created, it was the baseline was the ownership of land. Because if it belongs to me, I will be motivated to do something because I will pass it on to the next generations, my children. I will have a heritage that I will be an asset that I will be able to pass on. If this is fragile, and you know that at any given moment, this can be taken away from you, and of course, with everything you've built on it, there is a risk. Then to have companies, because basically those factories that could do agro-processing are companies. To have a company, you need competences, skills, you need capital, and you need the land and the equipment. When it comes to access to capital, if you want a loan, and the loan is 10, 15, 16%, it makes the money very, very expensive. Borrowing is very expensive. So when you are a company, you're not sure that your turnover will enable you to pay back. So you're a bit prudent and you're like, okay, let's play it small. And if it's enough, the turnover you're making, the money you're making to feed your family and maybe your village, you don't want to take more risk, because taking more risk means accessing more capital, borrowing more. What do? The bank will ask collateral on my house, my personal assets. Do I really want to take that risk? So that's a big thing. So supporting SMEs and supporting banks with a easier access to cheaper credit, so that in turn they can give cheaper credits to SMEs or small loans to SMEs. That's one thing that we are trying to do through our public bank called Proparco. Another reason is the skills, because the equipment that they would acquire abroad requires some skills that people do not have, because that was not equipment that were built here. So that's another challenge. It can be addressed very easily, because when you buy the equipment, you buy the training, and that's where we go. But I think that the main thing is, when you have an emergency to look at tomorrow, it's very difficult to start thinking ahead next month, next year. And there is so many uncertainties that investing your own assets and risking your own assets on something that isn't sure, isn't certain, probably that's a deterrent.
That brings me to another question in terms of, we've seen most African countries rely on foreign aid from the West, and now we do have a new president in the United States, cut down a lot of aid to Africa. What do you make of that?
Well, we don't have any certainties either. You know, he makes announcements and then it's a bit complicated. So we don't like to shout before we are heard. So we want to make sure they also announced that they would be reviewing the whole US aid and which is ID actually, international development support. And it doesn't mean that they will cancel it all. They are going to look and review the whole support they're giving through the kind of interest they have. We also support many African countries. We are more into loans because we've moved from aid to trade in the past years. And we're not addressing poor countries. I mean, when you look at Tanzania, you're not a poor country. You're a country that has resources, that is developing fast, is a fast developing economy. The economic aggregates are good. There's no over-indebtment. There is a double-digit growth. Companies, even if they face challenges, sometimes they still have good turnovers and they stay. They're not leaving. So obviously, it's not a poor country. So when you are talking to a country that is a middle-income country and looked upon as a middle-income country, well, then you talk loans, projects, of course, loans under the normal rate that they would have commercial loans, but it's sovereign loans. Of course, they have bonifications, you know, there's support from the French state so that we can offer low-rate loans. But still, it is a global partnership, and it's somehow business. And why would we carry on, you know, bringing aid like in some areas we can, but it's like to sort of give an impulse. But why would we carry on, treating these countries like they don't have a government, they don't have a policy, they don't know what they need, so we know better? We have to stop this because it's boomeranging back, and not in a good way. We do not get gratitude for that. We get reactions like, "Hey, we know what we want. This is our country. We don't want this paternalism, this kind of patronizing and telling us what we need." And we take your words for it. So we want to partner equal to equal.
From where we're standing at this point in time, when moves like those announced by President Trump, France as a development partner, how much pressure do you find yourself in when you feel like a gap might appear somewhere and maybe we're going to have to fill it?
Again, we do not shout until we're hurt. We wait until the decisions
It does concern you, though.
Actually made. It does, but we are more concerned, for instance, in the multilateral institutions, where the United States are huge contributors. We will have to find ways and means to chip in a way that we keep the amounts. But if you remember, as Europeans, we've been through this when the UK Brexited. And everyone was in panic, saying, "Oh my God, they're not going to contribute as much as they used to." And we eventually found some balance. And we survived, and the development aid, the European development aid, has survived as well. So it's more in the multilateral institutions, and we will handle that when decisions are definite and made, and we have a clear vision of how much is actually withdrawn. And if the countries come to us and say, "We used to have this amount in this area from USAID, we don't anymore, can you help us?" We're not going to come and say, "Oh, so you don't have this anymore, so here," again, we're talking to grown-ups, we're talking to adults, we're talking to countries who know better what they need, and it's up to them in the first place to look at what they have, what's left, what they don't have anymore, what they want to reshuffle, how much is the state willing to take over, and how much can they actually not take over, and they will turn towards other donors and see what we can do.
In 2020, if I'm not mistaken, the US did cut some funding to the WHO and the EU stepped in. Do you see a similar scenario come in if it does actually go through?
Honestly, I don't know. We are not withdrawing in any way. The EU, and you could certainly talk to the ambassador of the European Union, is not at all withdrawing in any way. We still have big amounts in cooperation, and this hasn't changed. And we haven't had, again, any requests from Tanzania, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as EU has been concerned, asking us to step in because they are afraid of what they're going to lose. And I think they are keeping very cool blood until we know exactly how much is going to be withdrawn. We'll see.
Let's talk regional politics. What's your take on the DRC conflict?
This is such a complicated matter. Everyone has tried to look into it, especially through Western eyes. If we are humble enough, we have to admit this is very complicated. We liked, when I was young, at school, we had a very simple world to read because we had the good guys in the West and the bad guys in the East. And the middle was the Cold War. And then suddenly, in 1990, the Berlin Wall fell and the Soviet Union collapsed. And then suddenly we had a multipolar world. And it was much more difficult. And then suddenly Africa had a very important role to play in this. And it's very, very difficult to read. And, in 1994, what happened in Rwanda, there was a commission and a report that reported that France didn't have a responsibility, but had been completely blind and didn't understand what was going on. That's, if we can be reproached with something, it is that we just didn't get it. We thought we were avoiding things from worsening. We were avoiding a war by supporting one camp, and actually we were completely wrong. So I think we've paid to learn that it is not easy from a European, French point of view to have a clear vision on what's happening. It would be so easy to say, yes, there's the M23, they're the bad guys, they're supported by Rwanda, even if Rwanda doesn't clearly admit it, and then DRC, they don't want to discuss. Okay, it's so much more complicated than that. There's the issue of minerals, there's the issue of communities and ethnic, the Hutus who've been there for a long time. And then when something lasts for a long time, people get organized and get on with it somehow. So if we try to step in any way, the risk of a wrong analysis is huge. And I listened to the takes of many African leaders who came for the SADC EAC meeting, and they said we need to find African solutions to African problems. I think they're dead right. And if we can help through what they tell us, then we're very willing to help. But we will certainly not tell you, oh, here's how you should see it, here's our analysis, and here's how we think it should go. Because they're your neighbors, your first liners. The spillover would threaten you in the first place, threaten Burundi in the first place. Let's not, I think we are observers, we're very much willing, we are in the MINUSCO, of course. So we are not turning a blind eye at all, but we trust the analysis that African leaders are making because they are first liners and because this is their continent. It is a very intricate, complicated matter. If they tell us that's the way forward, we'll say, okay, we will follow the way forward. And we're only too happy that it's a regional, the region has taken that matter in hand.
But you do understand that whatever happens or is happening here in Africa does affect in one way or another other European countries in terms of refugees and illegal immigrants.
Everything that happens on the continent impacts Europe in terms of refugees. We have a diaspora that accounts for many refugees, of over 2 million in France, people from sub-Saharan Africa. So these people are concerned with what we do and what happens in sub-Saharan Africa. We are not at all turning a blind eye. We know that we need to support the humanitarian side of the issue, but thinking that we can stick our nose into it and pretend we understand and we know what's to be done, I think we would be wrong.
Right. You were named among the 100 most influential change makers in Ghana. What brought that about?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
You had a TV program in
Yes.
in Ghana.
Yes.
That made you quite prominent, didn't it?
It made me visible. Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
I wanted to address the public opinion because I thought, okay, they see all those Balozis everywhere running around with their cars with a flag. What are these guys doing in our country? And rightly so. The government, they know because we talk to them. They know the kind of loans or grants, the projects we're running together. But the public opinion, they don't know. Mm-hmm. So I thought, let's do a TV show that would be entertaining. You know, if I do a TV show, I say, now you just sit there, turn on your TV and watch something. I'm going to tell you about France. People wouldn't watch it. But if we turned it like it was an entertainment show and we had a VVIP, like a celebrity, a singer, celebrity, actress, or people would watch just because they like that celebrity. And through this, the eyes of this guest, we would discover the kind of things that France was doing. So it was an amazement to me that it was such a success. I would never have thought it would have become a TV show with several awards and all that. And I was the first completely surprised of the kind of popularity that I got through this. But the conclusion I draw is that the people, they are very happy to welcome foreigners in their country as long as somehow we tell them what we're doing. And they deserve to know. So I'm
going to do the same here.
I'm trying to think of how to do it differently because I don't want to reproduce the exact same thing, but we are trying, yes. We're doing lots of projects in many areas of Tanzania, and I thought, yeah, I need to find a new concept of a TV show to be able to get into people's homes, with a product that they would be happy to watch. There's something to win maybe at the end, or someone they like that appears on the screen. But I'm still thinking of the concept.
Not so many Balozis do what you want to do or what you've done. Is it your passion? What drives you to do that?
The objective is I need people to understand what we're doing here. It's a matter of respect, I think. We all do it differently. I mean, some will be in answering your interviews and be happy to be in interviews. I thought it would be interesting to be a host and not only interviewee. Some people are not comfortable on TV, so why would they just do that? I had an amazing High Commissioner of the UK in Ghana who cycled around the country to go and visit different projects that they had funded. And I was so impressed, because it's not Balozi-like either, but I was so impressed. I can't even cycle to the corner of the street, so that was impressed with that too, but he was very healthy. And of course, all the TV channels and news were impressed and following him, and he had a huge media coverage by doing that. And I thought, wow, this is a different way of doing diplomacy. It's cultural diplomacy, it's popular, people-to-people diplomacy, and I think that's probably the way forward. We're in a different era. Now, everyone has an opinion. Everyone can express that opinion through social media. We are individualizing communication, having a direct contact with people through the social media. We need to change the way we do diplomacy.
Crown Media. Hapa ni nyumbani.